This video is brought to you by Rise. So about a month ago, I shelled out about $2,000 cash for this display. And not only that, I had to wake up super early to reserve it, drive 2 hours to go get it, drag it through a mall and back to my apartment just so I could have it now opposed to July because of the back order or pre-order wait times. And I know what you're thinking. You're like,
you put yourself through this whole ordeal for an Apple Studio display.
and maybe you're right. Maybe I am a chump. Or maybe you're an admirer or an owner and you're here for purchase validation. Well, for your information, I am here to neither vilify nor justify the purchase of an Apple Studio display. Today, I'm here to tell you a story about my 15-year experience using Apple or Mac computers and how I came to this weird purchase decision, because it certainly didn't happen overnight. So how do we get to this point? How does somebody wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I'm gonna spend 250% of what I should on a display? Well, in order to rationalize what I did, I gotta bring you back down memory lane and explain the different monitors I've used over the years with Mac OS X. And the first type of panel I ever used was square, or the type was square. I'm sure many of you are aware of these or have used them. 5:4, I believe, is the aspect ratio. Commonly 1280 by 1024, and they were something, man. It was like the early 2000s kind of panel. I used them in earlier iMacs at school. That's how I became acquainted with Mac OS X. And then I used like an Acer 19-inch from like an office, I'm sure, with my garage sale iBook that my dad got me for 50 bucks. And then eventually a MacBook Pro that I was supposed to share with my sister, but I never did because I just stole it and it was mine. It wasn't anything spectacular. I'm sure the brightness sucked. The pixels were probably bigger than my thumb, but it worked. And that's all I needed it for. But then I graduated to a widescreen monitor. First up with the 2011 iMac that I begged my parents to get because we had them at school and I thought they were great. I was a tech reviewer when I was 10 too. I just didn't have any viewers. My viewers were my family. And then I ended up getting like a Dell 22-inch, not quite 1080p panel, but that aspect ratio allowed me to delve into applications like iMovie and then Final Cut Pro and Photoshop, so I could take advantage of that extra horizontal resolution, something I didn't have with the square panels. And then when I decided to build a PC, which ended up being my creative Hackintosh workstation in a year or two, I got a 27-inch 1440p panel. And that was something. I mean, it's not 4K, it wasn't anything super crazy. Even at the time, it was a more budget TN specifically panel, not great with colors. But the extra screen real estate that it provided me allowed me to more efficiently use apps like Final Cut Pro and Photoshop, which really served as the basis of my creative skill set today. That time that I spent with that monitor is when I exponentially got better at doing the things that I do on YouTube and also in my freelance work. So in hindsight, thinking about my jump from square panels to widescreen panels to a 27-inch 1440p panel, each leap gave me some basic level of functionality. And to this day, the bare minimum monitor I need to be most efficient is, in fact, a 27-inch 1440p panel. It offers the right amount of screen real estate and resolution to work with the programs that I need to. And I could still get away with that. It just wouldn't be great, and that's sort of the point that I'm getting to. Buying the iMac 5K changed everything for me, and it seems kind of obvious, but back then, I was more focused on the power that I was getting with it. Out of high school, I knew I wanted to pursue videography and photography, and I wanted to have a more comfortable 4K workflow, because I would shoot in 4K and render at 1080p because my Hackintosh that was jerry-rigged and everything, it could only handle that really smoothly. So I'm like, I want 4K, I want increased horsepower. What do I get? Not the Mac Pro, not an underpowered, overpriced MacBook Pro, but an iMac 27-inch 5K. So I was focused on the specs. However, the built-in display was spectacular. The more I used it and the more I got accustomed to it, the more I fell in love with the 5K panel. Specifically, retina scaling. Every pixel is represented by 4 actual pixels, just like on your iPhone and iPad. 218 pixels per inch at 27 inches is mwah, it's chef's kiss. Once you get used to that, nothing looks the same. The colors are fantastic. They are comparable to your iPhone, to your iPad, to your MacBook. It's all consistent. And the brightness, dear God, the brightness. It was searingly bright, and it still is, you know. And I loved this panel. I loved it so much. I used this computer for about a year and a half until the M1 Max came out. And of course, that was super exciting, but also scary because I'm like, oh my God, I have this previously $3,000 iMac that I need to get rid of. And I need to get rid of it before it depreciates into nothing. And I did that, and I got some of my money back, not all of it. And I was happy that I did that, but I was grieving the loss of the gorgeous display I used to use. So for the sake of performance in my wallet, the iMac 5K had to go away, and I was sort of left in this limbo period of kinda, sorta dissatisfaction. I first started out with the Dell U2720Q paired with my M1 MacBook Pro. I actually started using that before I got rid of my iMac, so I was already pretty well adjusted, and it was great. The bezels are thin on that thing, 4K scaling is all right, the monitor has 350 nits of brightness. It's an overall really solid panel, especially if you want something USB-C powered, something simple for your Mac. So that was great up until the 24-inch iMac came out, and that's when I got excited and was like, oh my God, I can have my iMac back. So I got a spec'd out 16 gig silver one and used it, and of course the display quality is great, which I'll touch on in a few minutes here, but it's just small. 24 inches does not stack up to 27. I'm a size queen. But in all seriousness, I needed more screen real estate and more power. I think that I gave the M1 chip a bit more slack in my MacBook because for years I was accustomed to underpowered Apple laptops, but in a desktop I expected more and it didn't quite stack up to the Core i9 Vega 48 iMac that I had to sell. So I got rid of or returned the spec'd out M1 iMac and kept this baseline one, which I still use to this day. And while I was using another monitor, which I'm going to talk about, which I was really unhappy with before I switched to the studio display, I would resort to this computer because it had very similar, if not identical, qualities to the 5K iMac. The same kind of pixel density, 218 pixels per inch, almost the same brightness, if not the same brightness, same color quality, True Tone, which is really nice. It automatically adjusts the color temperature. So it was sharp, bright, colorful, everything that the other third-party panels were not quite as much of. So I'd come out here, and although I couldn't do the bulk of my creative work, especially with a baseline M1 chip and 8 gigs of RAM, I would just enjoy doing stuff on the iMac because the display just looks so fantastic. And then I kind of found myself in a pickle. I'm like, okay, well, I want the iMac 5K. I can't buy that because it has Intel attached to it. What do I do? What do I do? Oh, let's buy the Pro display. No. I contemplated that for a minute and I was tempted to, and I technically could have done it even though it wasn't really available at the time and still is in limited supply right now. But the two reasons why I didn't buy it, A, that would be fiscally completely irresponsible to finance something like that. I'm financing gear, I'm paying for rent, I'm paying for food, I'm paying for life, and an additional $500 a month for that, no. It's a gorgeous display, but not only that, it's like 3 years old now. So if I'm gonna spend that much money, I A, need to be able to more, and at that time I wasn't able to. I'm still really not comfortable doing it right now. And B, I want it to be mini LED. I want it to be up-to-date hardware, you know what I mean? So if I'm gonna shell that much out for it, it better be top of the line within a year old. So that's why I didn't go for that. So I was like, what do I do now? Oh, let's buy an ultra wide. I bought the LG 5K 2K to tide me over until the next Pro display or display, which ended up being the studio display, came out. And that was cool for like the first month. I wanted extra horizontal resolution. I wanted 4K quality, which it was, 5120 by 2160, basically a 4K panel with an additional amount of horizontal screen space. I wanted it to be bright. It was 400 nits. And I wanted it to be fun, and it was fun, and I actually convinced another YouTuber to buy it, funnily enough, and I'll tell that story in a minute here. But I ended up hating it. I ended up really disliking it because, again, it just didn't quite stack up to the iMac 5K that I loved so much. So to sum up what made me unhappy with third-party monitors, and this is a me issue, by the way, this is specific to me, I'm not saying this is objective, this is my tastes, I'm just sharing my opinion. One, nothing was bright enough. I needed the 500 nits, even 400 wasn't good enough with my LG Ultrafine or ultra wide. Number two, the scaling looked weird. Even at 4K-ish, even at 5120 by 2160, 4K with extra horizontal resolution, the scaling was just not quite right. Even with my Dell Ultra Sharp or U2720Q, it was good. It was better than my ultra wide, but still not quite Retina, and I can never unsee Retina. I need it. And finally, three, especially with the LG Ultra Wide. Wobble was an issue. On a VESA arm, even with the built-in or included stand, I would be tapping on the keyboard and everything would be wobbling. I could see the bezel wobbling and it would give me headaches. I would get up and go to my iMac to do work because I just couldn't stand watching it wobble around. And something else I'm unhappy with is often how I manage my time, which brings us to today's video sponsor, Rise. Probably like you, I am a serial procrastinator, web wanderer, and time waster. But with Rise, you can get a better idea of just exactly how you are burning your precious time. Once installed, you can track your usage of specific apps and websites, as well as see helpful insights and analytics, which can help you build better work habits. I definitely need to. I just got out of school for the summer and I need to use my limited free time as effectively as possible to grow my channel and freelance media business. A feature I'm super stoked about is their automatic break notifications, which can help to prevent burnout, which I've never experienced, of course, just kidding. Use my code Noah Herman with my link in the video description to be one of the first 100 people to get 25% off your first 3 months with Rise and maximize your productivity today. Rise additionally provides a 14-day free trial so you can test out the product before buying. So where do we leave off? Oh yes, I hated my LG Ultrafine. It sucked, it exemplified everything I don't like about non-Apple panels, and I was sad. Until the Apple event happened and I had to cover it, and lo and behold, Apple announces a cheaper display, the Studio Display. And I wasn't initially like blown away by it. I was excited. I was like, yeah, I'll review it. And I ended up pre-ordering a VESA mount model too late. So it was gonna arrive like 10 days after the initial shipments would happen. So I was sad about that. And then I just started thinking, I'm like, is this for me? Is this for me? And I was like, no. I'm like, I spent $1,600 out of pocket for this ultra wide. I can't sell it. I can't get rid of it. I don't want to ship it. I wanted to live with my decisions. The fiscally responsible part of me was like, no, you will not be doing this. Just like you've already been so fickle, just stop. But then I did some more thinking. I talked to somebody who almost convinced me to get the Pro Display XDR again, but I was like, no, like it's still not happening for now. But then I talked to my good buddy, Christopher Lawley, a fellow YouTuber, and he was equally excited about this panel, and I actually convinced him to buy the LG Ultrafine or Ultra Wide, and he convinced me that I hated it, and I didn't want to admit it because I wanted to be like, you know, I bought it, I'll like it. Sort of like when you buy a bad coffee and you drink it because you don't want to waste it. He was like, Noah, this sucks. He's like, come on, like he's like on paper great. He's like, but listen, like he's like, you've had the iMac 5K, you know what true Retina looks like, you know what, the brightness is like, all of that, just like admit it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I know, I'm like, I hate it, and I hate this panel. And then I talked to him some more, I was like, I maxed out my Apple Card buying all the new stuff. I can't put anything else on it, and I don't necessarily want to pay $2,000 out of pocket for one, if I even get one. And he's like, yeah, fair, but he's like, listen, just do it. See if you like it. You can always return it and just get one while you can. So yeah, after a lot of thinking, lost sleep, long phone conversations, and years of experience using macOS with different types of display panels, I paid up. I got my first party Apple branded monitor. And it wasn't cheap. It was $2,000 with education pricing. And not only that, like I said, I had to schlep out 100 miles with these gas prices, and then I had to drag this heavy monitor and a heavy box through the mall, kind of by choice because I decided to get Chick-fil-A after picking this up from the Apple Store with a friend, so that was stupid, but it was good for me. I needed the exercise. It was pretty funny. But getting back to the point of this video here, was it worth it? And in my experience, as you can imagine, yes, it was, because when I finally got this home after the whole exhausting ordeal that it was getting it, I unboxed it and instantly fell in love with it, compared to with my iMac where I slowly fell in love with the display because the design was so outdated. But this just looks sexy. And I'll talk more about that, how that like impacts my quality of life later. But I want to specifically talk about the build quality right now. First and foremost, I don't really experience wobble with this. I mean, sure, it's going to move if you really like kick your desk, but when it comes to just tapping on a keyboard and a trackpad or whatever, this doesn't move. It's heavy. Although my ultra wide was just as heavy, I'm sure the stand is of lesser quality because you're not paying $400 for it. But even still, that thing would wobble, even when it wasn't on a VESA arm, and it really wobbled on a VESA arm. So that's why I opted for the stand or the height adjustable one. Also too, The height adjustable aspect is really nice. Are you overpaying for the stand? Yeah, I'll talk about that later. But I mean, it's really effortless here. It's just like what you get with the Pro Display XDR, just miniaturized a little bit. And I like this feature specifically because sometimes I want to enter a sort of like sport mode with my MacBook Pro here. This is how I used to use my monitors, because of course this display is superior and whatever display I was using before was just not as good, so I wanted to make sure I was seeing everything as bright and colorful and saturated or whatever is possible. But when I need this extra display, when I'm working with files or a web page and I have like Keynote open here or like a video editor, this is nice to be able to just automatically just be able to effortlessly get my monitor to a desired height, and then when I'm done here I just close the monitor and I'm back in action here. Also too, the bezels, are they the best quality or thickness or whatever? No. Do I wish they were thinner? Maybe. But compared to the iMac, which had bezels that were like this thick, honestly, I'm happy with it. I'm also happy that it adds some size to it. Like, I didn't like my 27-inch U2720Q because like the bezels were thin, but it made the monitor feel really small. So I mean, if you have two of them, it's fine, but if you have one of them, and I'm more of a one display kind of guy, I like to have a little more substance, or I like to have a little more space. So this takes up more room and looks a little less awkward on my desk. Also too, I want to talk about integration with my MacBook Pro. And as we know with Apple Silicon, the MacBooks are just as capable in most ways compared to the Apple Silicon desktops, which means that I can, rely on a more versatile kind of setup. So when I want to go, I just unplug and I'm ready to go, one cable. But when I'm ready to get back to work, I plug in here and it connects almost instantly here. Let's see if I can unlock. And boom, we're already connected with other displays, third-party displays. It would take a little longer. My Dell was pretty okay, but my LG Ultrafine, ultra-wide thing was just stupid. Also something too, this kind of threw off my train of thought, but this is important. With previous displays, when I would turn off my MacBook or unplug it, the power button or some indicator lights would flash, and at night that would drive me absolutely nuts. But with this, when I unplug, I mean, sure, I have this little like backlit thing, which I have to manually turn off, but it doesn't do anything. It's just completely just still. It doesn't flash, it doesn't do anything, and I love that. But when you turn it on, of course, it just instantly turns on pretty much, and you're good to go. Also too, let's talk about the integrated webcam and the speakers. First and foremost, the webcam, if I can even click things here, because I'm looking at this at a weird angle, it's there. It's great. It's the same-ish quality as my MacBook Pro, and not only that, it has the, follow you around feature, what it's called, center stage. I'm not always good at remembering Apple's marketing terms, but it's there. Is it the best quality? No, I'll talk about it more, but it's there, and the fact that I don't have to buy an external one to make this look less clean is great. But is the quality the best? Objectively, no. As for these speakers in here, are they the best quality by themselves? No, you could get studio drivers, you could spend more money to get better, sound quality. But the fact that these are built in and I can power them with just one cable, once again, just one cable to plug in and get to work, is fantastic. And they sound great. These are the best desktop speakers that I've ever heard in any Apple device thus far. So let me just show you. So yeah, like bassy, it's good enough for doing video editing, for doing just media consumption, no problems whatsoever, and it cleans up my desk. But let's not forget image quality. That's kind of important when spending $1,600+ on a display. It's everything I remember and more with the iMac 5K here. First and foremost, we don't have the stupid, outdated 2012 chunky design. That's gone. We got industrial, squared off sexiness here. But we, of course, get the 5K panel here, the Retina quality, 218 pixels per inch. Every 1 pixel scaled has 4, so everything is pin sharp. I mean, of course, if you like put your eyeball up to the display, you're gonna see some pixels. But I mean, like from a regular viewing distance, unlike a lot of the other panels that I've used, 4K and 5K-ish with my ultra wide, you can't see any pixels. It's beautiful. Just like with my iMac 24-inch, of course, the pixel density here is mwah, it's chef's kiss. Also, too, the color and the contrast. Is it the best thing I've ever seen? I mean, I've seen the Pro Display XDR. That's still objectively better, albeit 3 times the price, or 3.5 times the price if you buy the tilt adjustable one. But it's wonderful here, and not only that, It's super bright. It's 100 nits brighter than the iMac 5K, which was already bright. And this is so bright that sometimes I have to turn the brightness down, and I've never run into that issue because I've always wanted more brightness. Like I said, I use max brightness on my iPhone and my iPad, and it's stupid, but on this display, it's such a welcome addition, and I absolutely love it. So with all of that said, you know, okay, the display is the same, if not better. How does this impact my daily life and like how I work, you know? Because specs are important and the way it looks is important, but beyond looking pretty in more than one way, what does this monitor do for me, especially, you know, having paid $2,000+ for it? So to answer those rhetorical questions, this monitor really, to sum it up, has made my work a lot more enjoyable. I am happy to sit down and get to work because of how beautiful this display looks design-wise and image quality-wise. I love the way it looks. Once again, it's like a centerpiece of my office, just like the iMac is to my living room. It reminds me of the Pro Display XDR, which of course is even sexier than this. And the display quality is just next to none. It's next to the Pro Display XDR, I would say, in terms of brightness and color. And not only that, it is comparable to my MacBook Pro, so I no longer have to have my MacBook Pro open to see what a decent display actually looks like. And even though this is 60 Hertz, I'm happy to use it like this. I'm happy to just stare at this monitor. It's also nicely placed on my desk. I have a pretty big desk, and it fits really nicely, better than my ultra-wide did and better than my, you know, tinier Dell monitor did with tinier bezels. I sit at the bezels here. They're not perfect, but they make the display a little bigger, so it looks a little less awkward. But yeah, I love this thing. I love looking at it every time I walk into the office, and I know, you know, maybe I'm not supposed to like it because it's too expensive, but I don't care what the internet says. I don't care if you think I'm stupid for buying this. Maybe I am. And even so, I'm happy. I'm finally happy. I'm finally satisfied, and that's all that matters. And the fact that, you know, I do all of my work on this, I am pixel peeping and staring at colors and pixels and whatever, you know, second after second, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, month after month, year after year. If I'm going to be doing that and that's my job, I want the best, even if I'm overpaying for it. But of course, having spent $2K+ on this display, hell, even if I would have gotten the tilt adjustable one, which is $400 cheaper, I have complaints about this. You know, it's not a perfect monitor, and if I said it was, I would be lying. First and foremost here, the IPS panel is a tad bit disappointing. I wish they would have put a mini LED panel in there, but I don't think they needed to because there really isn't anything quite like this. And the brightness and overall contrast is still pretty good. But I don't see like the perfect blacks that I get with my mini LED display on my MacBook or iPad Pro 12.9 inch. But I digress. You kind of get what you pay for there. Also, too, the webcam is not like exceptional. It's not like The Verge level bad because they really complained about it. If I can open up Photo Booth here. But I mean, I'm happy it's there, but I'm disappointed that it wasn't, you know, better. I kind of wish that they went with a higher resolution sensor and just ditched center stage, but whatever. I mean, it's interesting, and I'm just happy it's there once again here. And do I have anything else written here? Oh, the stand, the height adjustable stand should be like $250 extra, you know, not $400. I mean, I get it. The Pro Display XDR one is $500 extra. But it's a bit ridiculous, it's a bit much. I know it's engineered beautifully, but I mean, just this, I don't know. I mean, I paid for it because I wanted it, but you know, objectively speaking, is it worth that much more? If there was a better alternative with an equally height adjustable stand, I would go for that over this. But yeah, this is what you can expect from an Apple monitor that really doesn't stack up, at least in terms of the, you know, extra functionality that it brings. It doesn't stack up to anything else. It's sort of unique, so Apple is in the position to get you to pay more for less. So with everything said and done, is the Apple Studio display worth the money? Generally speaking, no. If you are looking for functionality and resolution and bang for your buck, really, this is an awful choice. There's no point. Get a Dell, get an MSI, get an LG, get something that is like a third of the price, pretty much the same resolution, maybe higher refresh rate, totally valid. The critics are not wrong. For functionality's sake, this thing is stupid. However, if you are like me, if you are pixel peeping day in, day out, hours at a time, if you want retina resolution, searing brightness, incredible design, of course this has to turn off as I'm hyping it up, if it's for you, it's for you. Basically, that's what I'm saying. If you resound with my experiences and you have used an iMac 5K in the past and you miss it, you miss the display really, buy this. You will not regret it. And not only that, if you do, you can resell it for more than you got it for if you manage to pre-order, because they're so scarcely available right now. So yeah, that is my spiel. Hopefully you enjoyed the story. Shout out to Isaac, aka Canoopsy, for being the executive producer of sorts on this video. I had a lot of fun brainstorming this idea with him and also working on the thumbnail. I'm sure you could tell it's very Canoopsy inspired. But that's a great thing to be able to collaborate with a creator, another creator, sort of in an indirect or less collab-y kind of way. So yeah, thank you for that, Isaac. Appreciate you. And I appreciate you waiting for me to post, you guys in the audience who are subscribed. It's been a while. I just wrapped up my second semester of my junior year, so I have some free time to just work on content, and hopefully you've seen an uptick in quality or whatever. So that's about it. Buy the Studio Display if it's for you, and don't if it's not for you. It's as simple as that. And yeah, I guess that about wraps things up here. As I always say, check out my link to Rise listed in the video description once again. And as always, I'm Noah, and I will see you in whatever I post next. Peace.